Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. Today we're talking about the Teen Titans. And the Teen Titans, well, they are a property that we have had many iterations of. They, throughout their comics run, have gone through quite a few different lineups, and we have had a few different animated shows and movies. Teen Titans Go to the movies, Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go. There's a lot of different versions of Titans out there, including of course the live action TV show that started airing in 2018 and only finished airing last year. But now we have a Teen Titans live action movie coming out in the new DCU. So we want to get into that. We did touch on this when it was a news item and it was initially announced and revealed. I think it was either Deadline or Hollywood Reporter or Variety. It was one of those big, Variety or one of those trade outlets that put out the news a few weeks ago saying that, hey, Anna Nogueira is working on a script. She's also writing the Supergirl movie for James Gunn and DC Studios. She's also working on a Teen Titans live action movie. So we were talking about it back then, but now we want to kind of dive into a little bit deeper. We also want to get into how will they fit into the narrative of the DCU? Who will be the members of this team? There's a rumor out there that we want to address. And John also wants to kind of get into a little bit more about the history of the Teen Titans. So, speaking of John, of course, he's with us today. As always, John, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. So yeah, when we were kind of coming up with stuff to talk about, I obviously yesterday we were talking about Bat Family, but then I'm like, well, I kind of want to talk about the Teen Titans a little bit because Teen Titans is kind of like a weird sort of, I don't want to say weird sort of thing, but like it's kind of, the show just wrapped like a couple years ago. So we unfortunately, that's the last thing we were, because Teen Titans is kind of in a crap place right now. Like the live action show was not very good, and that just wrapped. And then Teen Titans Go, it seems like that's been going for forever, and not a lot of people really like that show, even though they did like the movie, which was weird. But yeah, so Teen Titans
It
kind
was
of
fun.
weird.
I mean, I can
Um,
take it for like 90 minutes or so, and it's very meta, and I don't think
yeah,
the every episode of the show is as meta, but that movie was very meta. So yeah.
yeah. So I wanted to obviously talk about Teen Titans a little bit more, but yeah, a lot of people think, oh yeah, it started in the '80s with
Right.
the team everybody knows and loves. Dick Grayson, who was Robin at the time, but then would eventually become Nightwing really quickly, and then Beast Boy, Starfire, Cyborg, and Raven. That was kind of the big lineup that everyone knows and loves, mainly because of the show that came out in the early 2000s. So we got all that. But the thing is, really, the team originated back in the 60s, in 1964, I believe. And it would the original lineup was, I believe, Robin, uh Speedy, Aqualad, the original Aqualad, and Kid Flash, and then Donna Troy eventually became a member a little bit later on. But that was like that, as well as like constant additions, would eventually become, the team. For a while it was never one of the hottest selling books. It was kind of, middling. And then I think they eventually canceled it sometime in the 70s, and then I think Marv Wolfman and George Perez, one or both of them, came to DC, and they're like, "Hey, you get this? You could Teen Titans, do whatever the fuck you want with it." And then they essentially redid it all. I mean, they took new characters and some established characters, put them together, and then we got the new Teen Titans, which is the lineup everybody knows and loves. It wasn't like an immediate hit. It obviously like grew and grew a little bit more and more. So eventually becoming like this great, like one of the best teams of, DC, and became, they eventually became Titans and all that. But yeah, so it's this team that a lot of people seem to like, although again, not the best place it is right now, because everyone has a gigantic hate boner for a show meant for 3-year-olds. So, that is a thing. Um, and then
Well,
we
I don't
have
know
the
if
live.
everyone does. I don't know. I mean,
A lot of people
there's
do,
a
though.
there's a certain like
Yeah,
unique quality to that show. Like I
I watched
can't.
an episode or two, like way back when. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is like so fucking harmless. It's like a
Right,
dull pair
exactly.
of scissors. It's like it's not. It's like where on this doll did the kitty show touch you? Like it's like really like you're really losing your shit
Right.
over this.
I
Like all
mean,
right, calm down.
exactly. Like, the
Um.
thing is, like, while I can watch the Teen Titans show from the early 2000s, like,
Oh
for
yeah.
hours, Teen Titans Go, I can probably watch an episode and a half and be like, "I've had my fill for the day." Like,
Yeah.
it's not quite what my taste is, but that's probably because, again, I'm not the target demographic for the
Not the
show.
target demographic. Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
But yeah, that
that's
was
definitely true
sort
for a lot
of
of people, I think.
yeah, I don't know. I just personally never I don't think it's the worst thing ever. I don't think it's gonna reach the heights of some of
Mhm.
the animated movies like Teen Titans, Judas Contract, or the original show, but
Right.
it's fine. It's whatever.
I
But
mean, the
yeah, that
intro of the original show is still
yeah.
iconic. The whole
I never got to
Titans,
watch
like, the
the Teen
whole I was
Titans
just like,
original
that
show.
intro, like, back then, DC was just killing it. Batman Beyond intro, the Teen Titans intro, the animated Batman, the animated series intro, Superman, the animated I'm like even Marvel, like, the '90s Spider-Man animated show, like, God, like, the X-Men of course, like, that's back.
The
Still
90s
on the block.
Fantastic Four show,
Dude, it
classic intro,
yeah.
just classic cheese fest, but yeah, um, so there was a rumor in terms of the Teen
Justice
Titans
League,
movie.
sorry, I forgot to mention Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, you cannot forget those.
Yes, yes, of course, with those intros, but yeah, there's a rumor that, from Production Weekly, which is a pretty decent source, but nobody has been reporting on it outside of Batman News, so I don't know how like concrete this is. This is apparently what the rumor is, that the Teen Titans um have like they existed, but they broke up, they disbanded, and then Damian Wayne is like, okay, I'm gonna get the Teen Titans to group up again, including Starfire, Raven, and Beast Boy. But instead of Cyborg, it's Kid Flash, which was like one of the original founding members, together to fight Ra's al Ghul, which I will never understand because, like, I don't care what DC tries to do. Cyborg will never be a Justice League member. He is
It
never
didn't make
going to be
sense
a
to me.
Justice League member. He is always going to be a Teen Titans member forever and always. Martian Manhunter is Justice League. Get that the fuck out of here. Cyborg, always Teen Titans. Come on, that's just ridiculous. But yeah, outside of that, I think that's like a decent plot. So like I wouldn't be mad if that was the case. I just think that and someone has mentioned this, like I remember watching this really good video essay about it where someone was like, "Yeah, Kid Flash is a little bit too overpowered." So I feel like the movie could be done in like 5 seconds if like Kid Flash was at just like regular power, not even like OP or anything like that. That's why they had to get rid of him from Legends of Tomorrow. He was just kind of like this automatic trump card and would just like obliterate everybody, and then every episode would be done in like 3 seconds if he was like actually powered or if he actually like did something. But no, they always had to like depower him or do this or do that. So I feel like Kid Flash is kind of hard to do. I feel like it's hard to do any speedster that's part of a team that's not the Flash family. So I don't know how that would work. I would hope that, I mean, especially if it's the Wally West, like OG Wally West, I'd like to see that because Wally West is great and needs some goddamn respect because God knows DC Comics isn't giving it to him. So I would like to see that. But like, again, it could be true, could be not. They were also said that they were going for a late 2025 production date. So that's like kind of production start. That's how
Which
they
is which is coming up rather quickly. I mean, you look at
yeah.
this report and like you mentioned, I mean, Production Weekly, by the way, Production Weekly is something that a lot of people might not be aware of if you're just an average Joe going to a movie theater. This is, I guess, in shorthand, it's kind of like Deadline.com or The Hollywood Reporter, except it's very much behind a paywall. You have to pay to subscribe to it, and it's a pretty the price for that is pretty high, and they kind of give you similar news, but then also they try to give you some insight that might not be available on a Deadline.com or Variety.com. And like the link from that article pulls you up to this page, this particular edition from March 28, 2024, and it mentions a bunch of other projects including like the Batman Part 2 that are currently at some stage of production, whether it's
Yeah.
pre-production, production, post-production. And but here's the thing: just because it's in there doesn't mean it's 100. You got to
Yeah.
take it like gospel, like you said. There's
Yeah. It's
still
not. It's
yeah
not for
room
sure,
to
you know?
for
So, yeah, I
interpretation.
just wanted to clarify that that is a rumor that that's what the synopsis is gonna be, which again is a decent synopsis. The team is fine. But if we're kinda, like, taking that out of, roundabout, if we're, like, separating that from, like, the rumor mill from, like, what I think they're gonna do personally, um, so I do think that we were kinda talking about this when we were talking about Teen Titans a couple weeks back, but I do think that they are gonna have Damian Wayne as Robin create the Teen Titans, so this would probably take place after Brave and the Bold, which I don't know how the fuck they're gonna make that work if that's the case, because I feel like you would introduce him in Brave and the Bold, and then later on have him like go off do the Teen Titans and that kind of thing. But I do think because that just makes the most sense, mainly because that's the most recent iteration of the Teen Titans was, Damian Wayne's Teen Titans. So I think they're gonna have Damian Wayne most definitely. Now, in terms of the other like definite characters, I think they're gonna have Beast Boy, because I feel like he's good as sort of like a younger character. Like he's kind of like, the jokey, plucky comic relief kind of character. So I think having him like work as maybe someone who's a little bit older than Damien, but not like as old as like Nightwing, I think that would be good to have. And then Raven, I think they're definitely going to have Raven in there because she did have sort of like a thing in the DC AMU, as well as the fact that those characters are kind of, very similar, like super dark, like edgy characters who, kind of like kindred spirits type of thing. And I feel like that was one of the better things about the DC AMU, and I really liked that. So I think Raven definitely could work as a character there, and maybe like have like a do a thing with like Beast Boy, like a love triangle. I don't know. And then finally for the last definite character, I think they're gonna have an Archer in there. I don't know what Archer. They could do Speedy slash Arsenal, whether the Roy Harper version. They could do the Mia Dearden Speedy. They can do Red Arrow, which also I think Roy Harper has taken the name of, as well as Emiko Queen currently in the comics. And then Arrowette, Sissy King Jones. She's more Young Justice, but I could see them kind of, combining Young Justice and Teen Titans, because
Right,
the actually comic accurate Young Justice is so different from the show that I feel
right,
like they
yeah.
might add in those aspects into the Teen Titans movie. So I think that could be kind of cool. I think they'll definitely have an Archer character. If I were to take a stab at it, I think they would probably go with like Mia Dearden, or Emiko Queen, because like, get some women in there, and then Emiko Queen's also like of like East Asian descent. So like, you get representation in there as well. So I think either or, and I think Roy Harper is tied a bit too much to the original Titans because him and Nightwing are like really good friends, as well as the fact I don't think Starfire is gonna show up because I feel like she needs to have a thing with Nightwing. She can't be young with the Teen Titans. I feel like she needs to be of age, like however old Nightwing is. Same with like Tempest and the Donna Troy Wonder Girl and that kind of thing. So I think they would have like those characters, and then maybe they were the original Teen Titans. Then they grew up, became Titans, and then they disbanded for whatever reason. And then Damian Wayne is doing his new Teen Titans. Now I do think that there's some maybe characters that they could possibly do that might be part of the team. I think that would be really good to have like lesser known characters. Like for instance, it seems like James Gunn is doing a lot of rebirth, stuff from some of his just stuff he's announced, and like the vibe we've gotten, like
By
some
the way, can I
newer
just
things. Yeah,
I
yeah. What's up?
and that's a good point, and please continue with that in a minute. But I was curious about this article. It just caught my attention, and I just can't get past it.
Mm,
If this description, according to this report, is true, like my question becomes like, okay, so the big thing that they're mentioning here is they're gonna have a Kid Flash in this, and obviously we don't know when the Flash, whatever version of the Flash, whether it's Barry Allen or not, we're gonna get in this new universe. Of course, the whole Ezra Miller situation. I don't think Ezra Miller is coming back as the Flash. That's probably highly
mm-mm.
unlikely. But I do wonder, would it make sense to, because we were talking about it the other day, the idea that you're gonna have a version of Robin. Essentially, you have Damian Wayne in the Batman Brave and the Bold, but then you also might have other members of the Bat family. It how does Kid Flash fit into the picture if you haven't introduced the Flash? Like, I start to worry that,
Yeah,
are we gonna be like
exactly.
going out of order, jumping the shark? And yeah, in this article they pointed out, but uh, I worry a little bit, that yes, I want the universe to be lived in, but one of the things that has been troubling about the MCU of late is it feels like, and I'll steal this from the John Campea podcast, which I love to listen to. Those guys do an amazing job. Where, like, John Campea likes to say, like, it feels like nowadays in the MCU there's a superhero on top of every 7-Eleven around the corner, looking to like save somebody from some kind of crime, or some kind of vigilante. I don't know. If somebody's getting robbed at every street corner, it just feels like there's too many superheroes running around the MCU, and that's making it's kind of like that whole syndrome thing from The Incredibles, where if everybody's super, no one is, and it's like, do we want that from day one in the DCU? I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like the
that's a fair
Justice League
point.
shows did a good job, like the animated ones, especially Justice League Unlimited, of giving us a world where heroes are very much a part of the big picture, but at the same time, they managed to balance things out so it didn't feel like that, no matter what threat you put out there, there's just always somebody at some corner of the street ready to save the day. Um, Whereas I think the MCU has sort of like gone to a point where it just feels like, well, everybody asks, why don't you call the Avengers? To the point where the actual movies and TV shows have to address that point, but it also makes things like feel less special because it just feels like it's too cluttered. I feel like they need to kill off a few characters, and then I worry, are we gonna end up in a situation from day one where there's gonna be too many characters running around, and it just creates confusion
Yeah,
because it's hard enough for you to relate to like one character in a movie as your lead. You're doing these team movies where you're gonna be introducing characters who are not even the prime versions of their character. They're all like spin-off characters. And if this movie goes into production in late 2025, as of right now, it might come out before Batman Brave and the Bold, although it's
yeah,
unlikely
which is
considering if Damian
weird.
Wayne's gonna be in it, which is why the information may not be super reliable also. But I mean, like, what are your thoughts about A, the whole idea of too many characters, and then B, like, how does Kid Flash fit into the picture if we haven't even met the Flash?
Yeah, that's the main thing. That was like kind of the red flag that made me be kind of question it, because it's like, why would you introduce Kid Flash without introducing, you know, the Flash? Because at least with Damian Wayne, I feel like they're gonna have Teen Titans after Brave and the Bold, because that would just make the most sense.
Right.
Because to introduce the character and then have him have a spinoff, which is fine. Because all the other characters, Starfire, Raven, and Beast Boy, aren't sidekicks; they're just young heroes. So I feel like that makes sense. That's why, out of all the definite characters, with the exception of maybe Roy Harper, but even then, I don't think they're going to have him. Is they're not, they're not like sidekicks. They're not, these characters. So I feel like having Kid Flash makes no sense, because you haven't. There, like, it feels like the Flash isn't even a twinkle in James Gunn's eye at this point. So having like our first introduction in terms of the Flash, having it be Kid Flash is kind of weird. However, now that I'm saying that, there could be a reason for it, because Kid Flash is usually Wally West. And the Flash that everybody knows is Barry Allen.
Barry
And with
Allen,
Ezra
right.
Miller being, well, for lack of a better word, a sack of shit, and kind of tainting the character as we know him in live action, it's entirely
Right.
possible that they want to introduce Kid Flash, the Wally West version, to like sort of be like, oh, no, 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 we're distancing ourselves from this Barry Allen guy who was played by this criminal. This is Kid Flash. This guy's
I
different.
mean,
He's
but then,
Wally
hey,
West.
to be
I
honest,
could
there might
see
be a
that
lot more people
happening.
out there who associate Grant Gustin with the Flash rather than
I mean,
Kid
I
Gustin,
do. Well, actually,
What
for
about
me,
those
it's
guy
John Wesley Shipp.
people?
John Wesley Shipp and Grant
Yeah,
Gustin are
right,
the Flashes to me.
right.
But I think if they're introducing that's the only reason I could think of if why they would introduce Kid Flash. Even then, I think
Yeah.
they're gonna kind of go away from sidekicks. Like for all the maybes that I have here are not sidekicks. Like for instance, I have Crush, who is the daughter of Lobo, which isn't really a sidekick. She hates Lobo. She hates her father. So I think
But
like
then again,
and
it's also in order to
so
introduce a character, you need to establish Lobo first. You know what I mean,
yeah,
though? Like,
so
it still
that's
kinda
why
ends
it's
up
a
in that.
maybe. That's why I don't think it's gonna happen.
Right.
She's just a really awesome character, and I really like her a lot, and I think
Yeah.
she's like really cool. So I think like and the fact, as I mentioned before, with James Gunn kind of being inspired by a lot of the more recent stuff, whether that be New 52 and Rebirth or like or beyond that, I think he might want people to bring in like some like newer characters, and Crush is kind of a newer character, and she appeared on Damian Wayne's Teen Titans, so I think that they could possibly bring her in, but it might be too much of a headache with Lobo. So who knows? But other characters, I thought Bumblebee would be a good one, not the Transformer, but Bumblebee, she's not really connected to anybody, and she's a pretty cool character. She's been part of the Teen Titans at some point. So I think like adding her in again, she's not really associated with anybody. So I think that's kind of a safe bet. And she's got a cool power set, and she gets the representation diversity quota. And not saying that's like that's the only thing. I'm just saying
Well,
she just happens to be a
yeah,
genuinely good character. And if they want like a diverse cast of
which
like
they
late
will.
teens,
I mean,
early
as they
young
should,
adults,
right.
yeah,
Yes.
like then
Yeah.
like grabbing those characters, and it's just a character that they so happen to, a lot of people like. And then I do think it would be really cool, even though he wouldn't really be teen, although they could kind of cheat it since it's a new continuity. But I think it's kind of highly likely that Blue Beetle would show up as in the Jaime Reyes version, because he's been confirmed for the DCU. Joel Maraduena is coming back. So I think what I would assume, I think they might bring him in depending on what comes out first. Booster Gold and Teen Titans, whatever comes out first, either like for instance, if he's introduced in Blue Beetle, or sorry, if he's introduced in Booster Gold, he'll be in there, and then eventually Teen Titans or vice versa. Because I feel like he's a young, kind of hip character that a lot of like younger people can relate to, and it fits if they're doing a Teen Titans movie, even though he like kind of pushes the lengths of
I
teen.
would not
But
mind it. I mean,
and
it's
he's been in the
yeah.
roster at some point, so it works.
Yeah. By the way, I just as a sidebar, like when you look at that description in that article, it's
Mhm.
sort of to me, it reminded me of like the Judas Contract in terms of the mix of characters and maybe and especially like if you're like you have that preference of Starfire and Nightwing should be like have that like will they won't they or some kind of romantic relationship and um yeah I mean is that like a do you think that's kind of and then also I think that they have Damian Wayne in there, so would that work potentially?
I think that could work. Because I again, he's done it in the comics. Like um, it works, and I do have I think other characters could also work. Like I do like how what they did with this version, how you had Nightwing and Starfire be like the mentors,
Right.
and then have like this team like be the Teen Titans. I really
I mean,
like how
it's
they did that.
almost yeah, and
Yeah,
it feels like it's like so you've got like the 2 parental figures and then you've got the kids.
yeah.
It very it very much feels like they're going for like that, well, I mean, this is like a literally a photo frame, so it's like a very much a family affair, it seems like, so, yeah.
But
I don't
yeah,
have friends. I got family.
yeah. Okay. Um, let's just quickly get through this before there's more of that. Um, However, there are some characters like quickly before we end this. I think there are a couple characters that could work in terms of uh like characters I would want to see. Like for
Mhm.
instance, I would like to see she was a newer character, but she appeared again in Damian Wayne's Teen Titans. Sort of adding into like the whole rebirth aspect that they're clearly doing here because Damian Wayne is heading the Teen Titans. Jin is a really cool character. I think you can do like a lot with her. She is kind of overpowered, but I think they could like make that like work. And I think she's essentially like this genie. Obviously that's the old school, Djinn is like the old school mythology version. Well, she's called a Silas, which is slightly different. I think it's just a female Djinn. So I think she would be a cool
Yeah.
character
I mean, they
to
have him
have.
in Miss Marvel, like Jin. Like
Yeah,
Jin is like basically like a ghost spirit, sort of a. It
right.
comes from like Arabic, Middle Eastern, or Southeast Asia, that culture. I grew up
Right.
with like my parents were like Jinns are a real thing. Like my mom
Yeah.
believes in it. I'm like, okay, well, cool. I don't
I
believe in
yeah,
Jinn. It's
I
like
just,
ghosts essentially, but yeah, they
I
come
just
from a
think that's a
parallel
cool.
dimension. It's
I just think
cool,
that's a yeah, I think that
and I
that's a
really
really
enjoyed
cool
it in Miss
character.
Marvel. So I'd love to see that as part of the DC
Yeah, like I
universe.
love because like again, try to get more magic in there because just magic
Hmm.
is just kind of a cool concept that I
Yeah,
would love to see more of.
tie into
So I
the
think
Constantine part of the
right.
universe. Which, by the way,
So
Constantine is still on that Production Weekly document.
yeah,
So
they
what
could,
Constantine they're talking about, I don't know.
who knows? But yeah, she's a cool character. Although she's newer, she's kind of like weird, so I don't know if they would want to go. And plus, she kind of fits in with the Raven. Like she's kind of similar to a little bit too similar to Raven, so they might not want to include her. However, other characters like Aqualad, I'd like to see the Jackson Hyde version because again, like you have the Tempest version, you have the Garth version that I think would be closely attached to the older Teen Titans. But luckily there is a second Aqualad, and he's like again, thanks to Young Justice, he's really popular and a lot of people like him. He's a great character. So I think adding him in there would definitely be cool. However, again, that kind of adds into the sidekick thing that they might want to steer away from. Same with Wonder Girl, at least the Cassie Sandsmark version. Again, that's kind of borrowing from the comic accurate Young Justice. Um, even though she's not really a sidekick to Wonder Woman, but again, that kind of feeds into it. However, unlike Kid Flash and Aqualad, we do have a Wonder Woman mythos like show that's being played with Paradise Lost. It's not a Wonder Woman show, but it's like introducing that mythos. So that's a little bit more likely than something like Kid Flash and Aqualad. And then finally, I think Tara Markov. Tara would be a cool character because I think it would be really awesome to introduce that character here. Like she's an active member of the Teen Titans. And then in a sequel, you can do Judas Contract. I think that like have that property. We get to know this character. Well, at least the people who don't know any better. Comic fans will be that Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like, hey, oh, there she is. But like at least like we get to know this character, we like this character, so when she eventually does betray the group, it's like all the more heartbreaking because we actually got to know her as a character. So I think that could be cool, like to introduce Tara purely on the grounds to have this character, and then when she's revealed to like be um Deathstroke's like prodigy or whatever, or his pawn essentially. I think that could be cool. So obviously they're not gonna like have everyone here. I do think the definite ones are Damian Wayne, Beast Boy, Raven, and at least some Archer character, the most likely candidate if they're inspired by Damian Wayne's Teen Titans will probably be Emiko Queen or Red Arrow. Um and I think maybe uh, uh, I think like a good chance that Blue Beetle would show up, and then I think Tarot would be really awesome to like introduce in an eventual sequel with Judas Contract. I think all of those would be really interesting, but I'm curious with whatever they're gonna do, as long as it's not as bad as fucking Titans. Then I'm cool with that. Like as long as it just doesn't go down that route, I'm good. Don't have the man who wrote What Killed the Dinosaurs of the Ice Age writing it, then you're good, you know? So that's all one can hope for, I guess. But yeah, I think Teen Titans could definitely work. Just get the right director. I feel like I hope that Anna Noguera is a good writer. I can't really judge because I haven't seen anything from her, but I just want it to be good. That's all a man can hope for. I just want it to be good, but that's true for all of these. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This is gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting. But speaking of directors, we just got some news. Today's been a good day for news in terms of both comic, book companies like DC and Marvel. We got the news that they cast a Silver Surfer for the Fantastic Four, and then there's news that Craig Gillespie, or is it Craig Gillespie? I can't. Is it
I think
Gillespie or
I would assume
Gillespie?
it's Gillespie because that
Gillespie.
sounds
Craig
better.
Gillespie is in talks to direct Supergirl for DC Studios. Now, he's somebody who's done a good amount of work like I, Tonya, Cruella. Cruella was a great movie. I, Tonya. I mean, I think it went a little under the radar, but I definitely remember like Margot Robbie getting nominated for awards, and even though the movie didn't make a ton of money, he's a great director, and now he's in talks to direct Supergirls, which, as you mentioned, Anna Noguera is writing in addition to Teen Titans. So what are your thoughts, just real quick, about this news? I know it's a little bit of a breaking news. I don't know if you've had a chance to really read through this, but based on his
Yeah.
past work, like, do you have a sense of like what kind of a movie are we thinking about here now that we had Millie Alcock's going to be the lead as Supergirl, as Kara Danvers and Anna Noguera is working on a script that James Gunn really really loves. So what kind of a film do you think they're putting together here?
Well, he's done like some really, really good stuff. Like Lars and the Real Girl, Million Dollar Arm, I Tanya in terms of director. So that's good. Like he's done some really good work. He's done a lot of like female driven films like I Tanya and Cruella mainly. So that's good. However, he also directed the terrible remake Fright Night. Well, it wasn't terrible, but it was nowhere near as good as the original. And he also did Dumb Money, which I heard mixed things about. I didn't particularly like.
I liked it. It was fun.
Um,
It was fun. It wasn't the best thing ever, but it was fun.
I think
Yeah.
I saw so many clips and story beats from Cruella, and I'm like, how the fuck is this a movie? Like, I'm just being like, does Disney really want to do their own female version of Joker that badly that they make a Cruella movie? And it's just
I
like,
mean,
it's so like
yeah.
weird. I don't know.
That's
Like,
not what I got out of it, but I see what you mean, though. I can kind of see the resemblance, right? Yeah.
yeah. But he also did Pam and Tommy, which I've been, I want to watch, and that was apparently really good. So he's
That
kind
was
of
good. There were definitely some good moments as well.
what, like Tommy's talking, you know what?
to
So that's
to his yes, yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
um
It's that was
But
a
it
legendary
it could
scene.
be either or. It could be like he's done some good work, but he's also done some pretty bad work. He's kind of a hit and miss director. So I mean, I hope it's good, but like the
Right.
last like major, movie that had a female lead that had a big budget was Cruella, which got relatively mixed reviews, and I don't know if it made money or not.
Well, but the thing
So
is, you got to remember that came out during the height of the pandemic, so they did do
so
like that
yeah,
whole release where I think it was in theaters, but you could pay like $30 or something like that to get it on Disney Plus at the same time, and it actually performed quite well. I mean, for considering the release strategy, I mean, for Disney
right,
Plus, anything they released around that time did relatively well, including Black Widow. Although Scarlett Johansson rightfully took them to the cleaners over that, and as she should have, because there's contracts in place, and you gotta honor the contract. But as far as just the when he hits, it seems like Craig Gillespie hits it, on the spot. Like
right.
he knows how to get it right. And yeah, I mean, every director has a bad day at the office. I, Tonya definitely did not connect with as much of the audience. Like it didn't bring in a ton of money at all, but it did get Margot Robbie a best, was it yeah, but an Oscar nomination. And look, it's not that she won it for Cruella, but you know, I wanna say Emma Watson, but is that That's not the right Emma
Emma
I'm talking about.
Stone.
Emma Stone. I'm like, my brain is dead today. Emma Stone like just won the Oscar for Best Actress. So he has worked with, Oscar-winning talent before, and Millie Alcock's got a bright future ahead of her. She's already gonna be in season 2 of actually, no, she won't be in season 2 of House of the Dragon, but she's gonna be in a bunch of other projects, and, she was a big part of season 1 of House of the Dragon, so now she moves on to the DC franchise. I'm excited to see if this comes together. Usually when this kind of news comes out, it's not just speculation. They've probably been engaged in these talks for quite some time, and maybe they're closer to putting pen to paper if they haven't already than what we're being led to believe here. So I'd imagine that while this isn't necessarily locked in, it's about as close to that as we're gonna get until James Gunn puts it out there officially. So I'm excited about this because it's progress. And then, we were talking just a few minutes ago about the idea that, hey, according to Production Weekly, they potentially are going to start in late 2025 on this Titans live action film. We know that Batman Brave and the Bold has no timeline because, Welcome to Derry is taking priority, of course. I don't know how that makes any sense in the world. I guess they're more okay with that now because they have the Batman. But even then, the Batman just got pushed to 2026. I'm like, get your shit together.
Hmm.
DC's the house that Batman built. Like, seriously, like, you can't just rely on Superman to get you there, because as much as I would want Superman to be $1 billion franchise, it's never been $1 billion franchise. So whereas the Batman has been like $1 billion, like I mean, even if you include all the Ben Affleck appearances, no single movie that features Batman in a starring role has ever made, in the modern era, like less than $500 million. Whereas for a Superman movie, like to get past that point is like a big deal. And like there's been two $1 billion Batman movies, and at least four, including the $2 billion ones that crossed the $700 million mark. So financially, I would like to imagine that project should take priority, but it looks like Teen Titans is going to be coming. If they're starting filming in late 2025, then maybe early 2027 or summer 2027. And with Supergirl, now that they are looking to bring in Craig Gillespie as that director, here's according to Deadline, they're saying the plan is for DC to shoot the movie for Q4 after they've completed James Gunn's Superman. What's the timeline for this? Like, when do you think this movie comes out?
Well, I mean, that's if Gillespie actually
Right.
does it. So, I mean, it remind me, but does Anna Naguera have a Supergirl script, or is it just
She
that she's
does.
in the process of? Okay, so I mean, I don't know how many drafts that is. It could be the first draft, it could be the sixth draft. I don't know, but it all depends. Like if, like, okay, let's say Gillespie, let's say they have like a final draft for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Gillespie signs on, and they're gonna, set a release date. I would imagine that they set a release date for maybe 2026, possibly 2027, but I don't know if they want to do, Supergirl and Superman back to back. However, if like that's just the case, then they'll do it. But the thing is, the Authority doesn't have a, script. Brave and the Bold doesn't have a script. Swamp Thing does have a writer and director, so it's possible that maybe Swamp Thing, it's Superman, then Swamp Thing comes out next, and then Supergirl, just so we're not having two super projects back to back. So like maybe like, oh, this is a sequel, this is what is this? So I would imagine like they might do something like that, but because that's the only other project that has both a writer and director. So I could see that, like, maybe in 2025 we have Superman, not Legacy, and then in 2026 we'll get Swamp Thing, and then Supergirl, and then finally in 2027 we'll get The Authority and Brave and the Bold. If I was trying to figure out a timeline for these
So does
movies.
Brave and the Bold not have a writer though?
No, it doesn't have. It's the opposite. Yeah, it has no writer, but
Wait,
it has Andy Muschietti.
but okay, so I believe Andy Muschietti and Barbara Muschietti, like brother or sister combo, they like sort of work on the script together, or did they use a Christina Hodson script for the Flash. I forget what that situation looked like. I know they made changes,
I think it
but
was Christina Hodson, and then they did like maybe some rewrites, but that's
and wasn't there a rumor that Christina Hodson might be working on something for the new DCU slate too? I maybe I'm
yeah,
misremembering that, but
she's one of the head writers, which is a
one of
little
the head
bit
writers,
concerning
yeah.
because
Right.
she
Birds
wrote The
of Prey.
Flash, so and Birds of Prey. Like, yeah,
Right,
Bumblebee was good, but I think that was a
right.
fluke, and you had Kelly Fremon
Uh,
Craig rewriting it, so there was also that.
yeah.
So, oopsies.
Well, I mean, I think your timeline is not too bad. In fact, that might be. I mean, guys, let us know in the comments. Do you think it's a good idea? Maybe we should like spend a day just kind of diving into this, and let's start to maybe list out like how exactly this is all going to play out. Like, what are the potential dates for these movies? Because we haven't gotten that big Comic-Con announcement yet where they give you, where, well, not Kevin Feige, but James Gunn would walk on the stage and be like, "Hey guys, all right, Superman Legacy," and the logo pops up, and then there's a date, and then you like draw out a timeline, and then you've got Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and then there's a date, and then you've
Right.
got something for Waller, and like we haven't gotten that, and quite frankly, I don't know if we will get that because James Gunn keeps
No.
reiterating, "We're not going to greenlight anything
Quality over
until we have a script
quantity.
we like it."
What a thought.
I mean, I love that idea. I really, really do. But like from an audience expectation standpoint, I feel like you have to find somewhat of a balance. I'm not saying give us like dates that are unrealistic and you won't be able to make, and then you have to reshuffle your calendar. I'm saying give us some rough idea. Now maybe they can tell us like some of these dates are tentative, or maybe they don't give us exact dates. Maybe they just say summer 2027 or something like that. But I would personally like to, I think, and I'm not the only one. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who would like to get some sense of an idea because, of course, when you read an article like this, that the plan is to shoot it for Q4 after they've completed James Gunn Superman, like it probably means they're going to shoot for 4 or 5 months and then you go into post production. So you spend most of your 2025 in production and post production. And then by the time 2026 rolls around, I mean, I imagine this movie they might wait to release it until the summer months, but they could just release it in like March, April, maybe even like early summer, like May, in 2027, in 2026, it would be. It just because, and I think we should definitely spend some time trying to make sense of like how this all of this connect together, because it's almost as if when you go back to that James Gunn presentation from at this point, almost it's definitely been a year and a half since he had put all that out there, all the projects. I'm beginning to wonder how much of that original plan is still in place. I feel like they've probably changed things since then.
Yeah.
I'm not saying any projects have been killed. It seems like they're sticking with what they have and only adding to it. But I don't know. I mean, and maybe part of that expectation comes from people just speculated. You're given the pieces like how the jigsaw puzzle was going to come together, but maybe the jigsaw puzzle comes together in a very different way than what we expected. And that kind of ties back into Titans too. Like you're gonna get Damian Wayne in there potentially, and so you have to first introduce him in Brave and the Bold, and therefore like what's the order in which these movies are gonna come out? Because
Yeah, it's like a
if
Secret Invasion, the
yeah,
Marvel situation where it got or like Doctor Strange and Spider-Man No Way Home where these things get delayed, so they have to like quickly rewrite stuff, or they just release it and then the timeline just doesn't fucking make sense. So,
right.
you
And then
know,
then we're led to believe that it doesn't need to, like, for example, I think now officially if you go to the chronology on in Disney Plus, if you want to watch it in chronological order, they list the Marvels after Secret Invasion, even though the idea was that the Nick Fury you're seeing in Secret Invasion is post Marvels, and that's how they were shot and originally supposed to come out. But now the official chronology is reversed too, and it makes that whole thing, the Secret Invasion, even more jarring and off, like putting to watch. But I mean, sometimes it doesn't matter. Like sometimes it does. The stories don't really connect. It doesn't. And you can always say like, yeah, this took place a while ago. Um, but I mean, late 2025 production start for Teen Titans puts it a year beyond when Supergirl will potentially go into production, and therefore, you will, much like I'm speculating summer 2026, spring 2026 for Supergirl, Teen Titans might not be coming our way until summer or spring 2027. Um, and of course, we still have to take into account all the Batman universe projects from Matt Reeves. and of course, so you have a couple of other DCU projects that are already on the horizon. Peacemaker. What I don't want to have happen is that James Gunn says, "Hey, not gonna green light something until the script is ready," and then we end up in a situation where I feel like this fall we're gonna get 5, 6 different DC things in quick succession, and it's like they're gonna blow their load all at once. You know, like you're gonna get the Penguin, you're gonna get Creature Commandos, Joker Folie à Deux. Even the stuff that's not really part of DC Studios, like the Batman, Batman and the new animated show that they've got, or I feel like I'm forgetting at least one other
Superman
project.
and Lois is another one. We
Another
don't
one,
know
exactly.
when Kite Man is gonna come out. Dead Boy
It's
Detectives is coming out in a couple weeks, although that's more Vertigo.
right.
But yeah,
But you know, like all those other projects I named, like they're all fall 2024,
right,
October
right, 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 right.
2024. I'm like, there's 4 or 5 of them. I'm like, there's a reason why Disney Plus likes to spread things out. There's a reason why Marvel and Disney generally like to spread things out. I mean, in some ways, what I don't want to have happen is that DC swings so far in the other direction that it becomes the other extreme. And then we end up with like these droughts where like next year there's gonna be just one DC movie. This year there's going to be just one theatrically released. I mean, Marvel also has the MCU. Marvel only has one theatrically released movie this year because of their scheduling and because of the strikes, which makes sense. But DC has ended up in this situation, you know, largely because of different reasons, like you know, because they decided to kill off the DC EU, and they didn't want to hold on to any of those movies. They put all 4 of them out in 1 year, and now it seems like we're in a situation where we might have a couple of years where we only get 1 movie, and then we might end up in a year where we have 3. Or it just I would like to see some consistency is all I'm trying to
Right.
say, and some predictability, because a big part of fandom enjoying the experience of a cinematic universe. I mean, again, we are DCU daily, but I keep bringing up the MCU because it's the only fair comparison to make in terms
Right.
of what the
No, that
DCU is
makes sense.
aspiring to be. And the MCU, like, if you ask any MCU fan, a big reason why they loved the MCU was because like they got, you know, they were getting this constant stream, and a big part of the experience, you know, of content and new movies and TV shows, but also it's been the idea that, you know, the fan that they always bring the fandom along for the ride, where you know you get those announcements, and yes, I mean sometimes the dates change, and you know strikes happen, the pandemic happened, and that throws things off. And yes, sometimes you know, recently at least, the projects have not quite been hitting the way they were in phases 3 and 4, but or rather like phases 2 and 3, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, but like, you know, by and large, like fans love the idea of like looking forward to like, oh yes, this movie's coming out here and here and here. It's kind of like similar to in sports. People love fantasy sports because they're like it gives you a chance to learn more about the teams you otherwise wouldn't know about, and it also makes you like a bigger, more well-informed fan of the sport that you're following. Similarly, I think people have a desire to kind of know a lot of the insights, which is why, you know, more people now know about what goes on behind the scenes with all these, you know, movies than ever before, and the resources are out there. You can go to deadline.com, you can subscribe to Production Weekly. But it seems like with DC, they're kind of taking a path right now, at least in the early stages, where we may end up in a situation where there will be confusion, more so because there's a lack of information rather than because there's too much information. And that's what I worry about. So I don't know. That was my big rant. I didn't know I had that in
Hey,
me
you know
today.
what? If I
But
can talk for 10 minutes straight about not getting Batman Beyond, but Jurassic League instead, I think you're owed your own rant at this
yeah.
point.
Yeah. I still want to see Vin Diesel cast in some role. I feel like
Oh,
he
fuck
deserves
me.
some superhero redemption. So like why not,
What's
right?
real is family.
Okay, any other thoughts on the whole Supergirl Craig Gillespie story? Is this something you're
Um,
looking forward to?
I don't know if it's something I'm looking forward to. I'm just like, oh, that exists.
That
Okay, cool.
exists, yeah. Fair
Because
enough.
the thing is, I don't have like a ton of like, I have a ton of investment in Superman because I know James Gunn. I've seen his projects. He's done good. He's done some bad, but he's done mostly good. So I'm like excited for that. The Authority, I'm intrigued with because we haven't gotten anything. Um, Brave and the Bold, I'm like kind of iffy about because Andy Muschietti seems like he made like one good movie, and now like everything else was either mediocre or like not as
Yeah.
good.
I didn't
So
even think like the second It movie was as good as the first.
I mean, I thought it
So
was very good, but it was clearly inferior. They just put way too much comedy in it, and that was like the kind of
mhm.
breaking point for a lot of people, and I kind of see that. And then you have, The Flash, which sucked. I don't really totally 100% blame him, but like a lot of it, I feel like was
It
him.
wasn't it wasn't a bad movie. I'll say like there were
Yeah,
definitely parts of it. There were some creative decisions that I wholly blame Andy Muschietti for. I don't care if he was, you know, covering for the VFX team or he legit made the creative decision to make all those CGI monstrosities like, Henry
yeah,
Cavill Superman look so fucking terrible. I'm like,
yeah,
dude, there's no
yeah.
reason
Not
that
everything
they
was
need
his
to
fault,
look
but
that
yeah,
way. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, and
yeah.
there was, but there were good moments too. Like every time Michael Keaton was on screen, I was like a kid again, just watching
Right.
Batman in 1989. Well, I wasn't around in 1989, but growing up in the 90s
No, no,
watching
no. I get what you mean.
Batman
I get what you
movies,
mean.
um,
Um,
it
but
was just a
yeah,
lot of fun.
Supergirl is kind of like I want to see the character done right because I feel like in live action the character has almost never been done right.
Yeah,
Ironically, in the Flash, she was one of the few good things about the Flash. I think Sasha Cali had the potential to be really, really good if she wasn't stuck in such a horrible movie. And on top of that, like she eventually, like the DCEU didn't die
dude,
off,
yeah,
and like she actually like
yeah.
got a spin-off and like it was good. Like she had the potential there. I could see it. The thing is with
They
Melissa
also gave
Benoist's
her a bad
Supergirl,
script. I feel like they
yeah.
underused
Oh yeah, the
her
script
in
was
that movie.
terrible. And again, I don't get like it's so weird that like James Gunn doesn't want to bring in like the really good people from the DCEU, like David F. Sandsberg or James
Yeah.
Wan or Henry
Right. Well, but
Gayden
the
or
thing is, I
anybody.
think but those
But he
guys, a
brings
lot
in
of those
Andy Muschietti and Christina
right.
Hodson. That makes no
But
fucking
dude,
sense
but
to me.
you gotta know those guys came over with Walter Hamada because they were all New Line people. Like they all made their
Yeah,
name working on horror movies at New Line. And then I
I
think
know, I
Walter
know.
Hamada has now gone over to work with I think it's Universal or something. He's at a different studio, Paramount Universal, kind of doing something similar to what he did at New Line, which is
Right.
like making mid to low budget movies that make a shit ton of money. Um and James Wan, of course, has got a collaboration
He
with
is certainly
Blumhouse,
working.
and David S. Sandberg wants to go back to his roots.
Yeah.
So, and I
Um,
don't know if there's a ton of crossover there with James Gunn in terms of like,
yeah,
the circles that they
it's
hang
just
in.
weird how it's like you don't bring in any talented people. You bring in the guys who lost like $1 billion for Warner Brothers. That makes sense. Anyway, but I think Supergirl, Melissa Benoist's version, she's not Supergirl. I'm just gonna say it. She did a decent job with what she was given, but this character was not Supergirl. She was a young woman millennial with superpowers. That's not Supergirl. That is so maybe back in like 1957, like that was the character. 1959 she might have been introduced, but that's just not like in the Silver Age maybe, but like I feel like they didn't do like a Silver Age, like modern Silver Age. It felt like they just were like they took the name Supergirl and just like little bits of mythos and then just did their own thing with it because I feel
Right.
like all the interesting bits with this character were not here. And then Helen Slater just sucked. So, it just I will, but I have her. I don't know anything about the Laura Vandervoort version for Smallville. I've heard she's good. I haven't watched the show, so I'll take people's word for it. Usually, because like everyone says Michael Rosenbaum is the best Lex Luthor. I'm like, I'll take your word for it. Yeah, he's probably great. So like it's just like I just want to see Supergirl done well, and I feel like the director to me is kind of hit and miss. I don't know the writer. I don't really know the main actress that well, so I don't have a ton of hope for this project. Swamp Thing, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic because if we get Logan James Mangold, then boom, absolutely count me fucking in. Let's fucking go. We're doing this. However, the thing I'm worried about if we get Twitter bitch fit Dial of Destiny James Mangold, that's when I get worried. So it's like we can either get totally amazing Mangold who makes great comic book movies, or we get the whiny little bitch who made the worst Indiana Jones movie it all depends on like what his like mood is that day, because I want it to be good. I think Swamp Thing's a really good character. He's been done well in the past. It's just like I don't know. It just depends on which personality James Mangold wants to do for this movie. So I'm kind of split on that, but for the most part, I'm like kind of optimistic. It's just Supergirl. I feel like I don't have like a ton. I just like I want to see her done well. But and on top of that, another thing I wanted to mention about Supergirl is that it is a miniseries written by Tom King, and infamously, Tom King has had a horrible run at DC Comics. Don't get me wrong; he's a very good writer when he's working for Marvel. When he's working for DC, he's been like shoddy at best. Like the only thing I could think of that was like kind of good was the Mr. Miracle run, which was fine. It was decent. Like they did a good job, but like his Batman run, a buddy of mine who read through the entire thing, he said that's probably the worst run of Batman I have ever read in my life. And he's read a lot of stuff too. So I trust him on that. So I just been like, I don't know. Like, I just don't think Tom King is the guy to like really be the, tether and the main like guy for this
Yeah,
story. It just feels like weird to me. I
I
hope
mean,
Anna
but
Navarre is
it's
a good writer, but I'm just
but
kind of iffy on it.
right. I mean, but like it's also Woman of Tomorrow is a popular iteration, so
I don't know.
it's
Maybe I'll eventually read it, see how it is, but I don't know.
I mean,
We'll see.
yeah. I did some research on this the last time we were talking about it, and I was like, this definitely is one of the more liked and more popular iterations. Now, how much Tom King, because I believe King is involved in the back end with James Gunn, like at DC Studios in some capacity. So, but how much like those comic book writers and illustrators have an influence on these stories? I guess once these movies start coming out, we'll find out. But um as far as, going back to the Titans for a second, um, I would like to see, I mean, the version that we saw in the article, like, where's the rumor? Which, I mean, they call it a rumor. I mean, look, it's coming from Production Weekly. There's some truth to it probably, but how much of it is true or not, we will
Yeah,
find out,
like things
maybe
change,
maybe things change.
anything could change.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah,
that
and
could just be based on a rough draft or a first draft,
right.
and like
Well, she
okay,
did,
that's the only
yes,
information they
exactly.
got, and
Yeah.
then we could have like a totally different movie. Like what people don't seem to understand is the rough draft of a script and the final cut are two entirely different movies.
Dude,
So that could
scripts get
easily
changed
change.
when you're on set, like, things
Yeah,
are different.
like
They
like
go do
sometimes
reshoots, stuff gets cut
like
in post-production.
for
Yeah.
instance, Iron Man, that movie started and pretty much ended without a script. So,
Right.
what was the
Yeah.
movie
Oh, Edge of
they just were
Tomorrow.
talking
Edge of Tomorrow, remember, was a film where they didn't have a script, and then Doug Liman
right.
was like, the fact that they gave us a production start time is what really, like, gave him a kick in the ass to, like, actually finish the script, because they were like, "Well, we're gonna be shooting." So, like, the
Right.
ADs and
I
everybody else, the
remember
production
I
team
remember
needs
reading
the script.
something like
So
recently where there was two writers, they wrote a movie and they're like, technically, we didn't submit the final draft for the movie 2 weeks after the premiere came out. So like I don't remember what movie though. I don't know if it was a superhero movie or something entirely different, but that happened. So it's like we don't
well, remember
that might have
the
been Iron Man.
Spider-Verse movie? But dude, Spider-Verse from last year, remember they were changing things on the print?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
well, the version that people watch different versions of that movie. There was, and nowadays, so it used to be that you would, like, literally have these reels of film delivered physically to the theaters. Then we got to a
Mhm.
point where people were getting hard drives, like, not people, like theaters were getting hard drives with the movies on them. Now you can download it off the server. It can play it directly off the server. Like, the bandwidth is there now to do that. It's kind of similar to, like, you watching Netflix at home, and so like Netflix can go in and change stuff out for on the fly. And like you watch the same episode one day, and then you watch the next day, something might be different, and you're like, what happened?
Right.
Well, they made some changes. They updated the files in the back end. It transcoded it into 100 different versions, and whichever version your device is playing now has something different about it. Similarly, for movies, you can do that now. So you know, as long as it's not something so significant, I don't think they usually try to change things like, you know, cut out an entire scene or like, you know, change something huge about like what a character might be wearing or maybe what they're saying and dub over that. Although there have been examples, Spider-Verse did have some dubbing, you know, things where like, what is that character saying? And like the people heard different things, and we found out that there were actually two different versions floating around. So that does happen, and you know, the technology is there now for them to be able to make those changes about as fast as, you know, like you making a change on a video and syncing it to your cloud, and then everybody else who accesses it 5 minutes later will watch the updated video. You can do that with these movies, but a lot of movies, I mean, you know, do usually there have been big examples. I think the new Star Wars movies, I heard that the sequels that you know, some of them like weren't really finished until like the days before the release. Like Marvel, there's been examples of some recent MCU films that were in that situation. You know, the MCU is infamous for putting their VFX artists and other production crew through hell with late game changes. So it happens. It definitely happens. Things change. But yeah, I mean, hey, look, John. Ultimately, Teen Titans, if they do start filming it in late 2025, that means we have like a year and a half for them to knock out a script, which if Ana Nogueira is already mostly done with Supergirl, and if that movie is going to go into production this fall, then they're probably moving into the pre-production phase, which frees up Anna to go then work on Teen Titans
Teen
and
Titans, yep.
spend some time working on that. So I think that timeline would work potentially.
Yeah.
I just the wrench in the whole plan and for me becomes where's Brave and the Bold,
Yeah,
and how does
exactly.
Damian
I would
Wayne
say
fit into
just
the
ditch
picture?
Andy Muschietti at this
It's
point, and because I
yeah,
feel like what would make sense, like, okay, maybe say Superman doesn't do as well as they hope, then boom, you have the safeguard with Batman because everybody loves Batman, and Batman's gonna make a shit
right,
ton of money no matter what.
right.
So I feel like that would have made the most sense to have Superman and then
But
Batman.
dude, that's the other thing,
And
right? Because the Batman Part 2 now is coming out in 2026.
right.
Will you have
But that's not
2
connected to
different cinematic
DCU, so
iteration? Right, like,
right.
are they gonna be bold enough, no pun intended, to have 2 cinematic iterations of Batman come out the same year? Because 'Cause we're
They
definitely not
wouldn't
getting it
they wouldn't
next
do
year,
that. They definitely
right?
wouldn't
So,
do
like,
that.
and then and then what happens to Teen Titans going into production at the end of 2025? Like, how does that work? Like,
I
or
have
maybe they don't have
no
Damian
clue.
Wayne in it. Maybe that part doesn't, you know,
That's we
happen.
did talk about how they might just say screw it, and we might just have like Nightwing be part
Mhm.
of the Teen Titans. Maybe it's just him, and like kind of like what they did in the DCAMU is have Nightwing and Starfire be the great shot right there. We have the two of them like be the mentors of like
Right.
the quote unquote actual Teen Titans. They could do that as well, or you know what? Titles change all the time. They might just make it like, okay, so maybe the original, again, another great shot. Another change was that okay, it originally was going to be Damian Wayne and his Teen Titans, and then but then like shit changes because of Brave and the Bold, because of this, because of that. I mean, Peacemaker wasn't like the whole thing with Waller and Peacemaker. Waller was supposed to come out before Peacemaker, but due to various things and various happenings, Peacemaker's coming out first, so they had to they're redoing stuff with Waller. So it's entirely possible that like, okay, the aim was that okay, we want Teen Titans to come after Brave and the Bold, but with Brave and the Bold kind of being on the back burner, well, now we're gonna have Teen Titans come first. Well, now we're gonna change it so that we're gonna have Nightwing be the head, and it's gonna
But
be
see,
just Titans, you know?
but there's a problem there. The problem becomes like if everything is connected, like James Gunn said it will be,
Yeah.
then it doesn't it throw your plans off? Like what I mean, or maybe there's less of a plan than we were being led to believe. Maybe they're kind of taking more of that early days MCU approach where like they're like, okay, well, we'll let this play out and see how it goes, and then we'll start connecting the dots. And so far, when the MCU has been trying to do the utmost job of connecting everything, that's when we seemingly have gone some of the worst you know, movies and TV shows from the MCU. Whereas, you know, earlier in the game, they sort of like rode the wave, and it allowed them to sort of, you know, dispense with what didn't work, but keep what did work, and then put the pieces together in a way that, you know, like led to Avengers Endgame. but now it seems like, where they overplanned it seemingly. Maybe that's what DC's got in mind. Maybe the outwardly James Gunn is like everything is super connected and there's like a big plan, and not saying there isn't, but maybe their plan isn't so detailed that you can't just swap out Damian Wayne and put in, Nightwing instead, and still make it work. Maybe that's how that would go. Maybe Damian Wayne comes in the sequel to Teen Titans 2 or something. Part 2 seems to be a popular thing right
Maybe
now, but
again, maybe they're going with that Captain Cold level of planning, make the plan, execute the plan, expect the plan to go off the rails, and then throw away the plan. So
throw with a plan.
and
Yep.
then make a new plan. And then so,
Then make a new
like
plan. Yeah,
everyone was like,
exactly.
I feel like in terms of planning stuff, you at least have to have like some sort of structure. Be like, okay, this is the like rough idea, but like with life, with how shit happens, you get plagues and epidemics, and then you get strikes,
Pandemics.
and then
Yeah.
whatever, same
Yeah.
shit. Anyway, but
Isn't
you
that
have
a
like
good idea?
you have like diseases that come out, you have strikes that come out. Maybe an actor like moves on to other projects. Maybe they unfortunately pass away. So like, okay, we gotta.
Yeah.
But you have to have some sort of rough structure. You can't like overly structure it because
Right.
then you get like How I Met Your Mother, and everyone hated that ending, and they planned that from the beginning, and everyone thought it was the worst ending ever, even though that was planned from the beginning. Or
Right,
you
because as the show developed, like, people fell in love with different set of characters than what they had planned or expected, and
yeah.
it's just
So
yeah.
then you had but then you could also do the Disney approach with Star Wars, where they planned
Had
absolutely fucking
nothing.
nothing, and then we got like this half-bagged bullshit with the
It was
Skywalker
like
saga.
J.J. Abrams walked out the door and was like, "Here, look, this is what I did. These are my notes." And then Rian Johnson was like, "What notes? We're starting this thing over." It's
And then
killed the
J.J. Abrams to
Yeah.
and then J.J. Abrams to Ryan Johnson was just like, what notes? We're retconning your entire movie and doing that from scratch because that makes
Yeah.
sense. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's like it's a whole thing. So, like, I
Right.
feel like you have to have a rough structure. Like George Lucas for the original Star Wars, he had a rough structure, but then, people, writers passed away.
Yeah.
He didn't feel
Yeah.
like working on these movies anymore. He did this, he did that. He had a rough idea with how
Yeah.
he wanted to do it with at
Luke
least
kissed
one
Leia, then they
trilogy.
became brother and sister, and
Yeah, like one trilogy, and then initially it was like 4 trilogies, and then he's
yeah.
like, "Okay, I'm just gonna focus on this one because I'm tired and I want this
Right.
to fucking end." And so he changed the plan, but he still had the plan to begin with. Like, you gotta have,
Right.
like, some sort of rough structure to, like, make that
Right.
work, to leave some
Yeah.
room to, like, for, life stuff to happen, but enough to be like, "Okay, we have an idea of where this will go." So, that's just my 2 cents on it, because it's like, I just feel like you can't fly at the seat of your pants, but you also can't, like, regiment shit because,
Yeah.
people
I mean,
change,
as the
life
yeah.
changes, modern thing like from the beginning of a show to the end of a show, society changes, like
Mhm.
fucking How I Met Your Mother was on for 8 years, like, society is different from when
The
that
world
began to
changed.
when it ended. The world is changing. So, you could have it's like you gotta have some room to,
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a
Yeah.
little bit of
Very
leeway.
Yeah, yep. I mean, hey, the Joker would agree with you. He's like, I'm you see these people, these are all schemers. I'm not a schemer. So I just take their plans. I just like let's show them how useless they really are. And the whole yeah, it's
Yeah, and then,
exactly.
yeah.
Mhm. Although the irony of that whole movie is that see now we're going in really big tangents. That Joker on the surface is likes to let off that he's somebody who's got absolutely no plan, and yet in the
Yep.
movie he's the only guy who's got a plan that's so meticulously followed step by step all the way to the end, where even when Batman wins, he loses
Yep.
and that's how much of a genius plan, a schemer that Heath Ledger's Joker
Yeah.
was.
I love how people get like a little bit of a side tangent, but like I love how people like get so mad over that. Now it's like, do I really look like a guy with a plan? It's like, of course he has a plan because it's like, wow, it's almost like the guy named Joker is saying a joke. Crazy. Like I love how like people get so upset over that. It's like that's literally the whole point. He's clearly has a plan. He just has the illusion of not having a plan because that makes him seem more crazy to the sane people of Gotham. That's literally the whole fucking point.
Which but that's where I think also people, when they started comparing Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor to Heath Ledger's Joker, I'm like, dude, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor was fucking crazy. There wasn't a lot of subtlety to that part of it. He was a psychopath.
I still love him. I still love that Lex Luthor.
Dude, no, I thought what he did in the movie was very uniquely different. In fact, I feel like Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor was the most scariest iteration of the character we have ever gotten, in a way like that was, especially for the time and even today. I'm like, they were like basically be Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos combined, and like still somehow then take down Superman and really just even fuck with Batman in the process. I'm like, it's eerie how close to that like those vibes we got, but then B, like the moment in the movie, the first time I watched it, I'm like, oh shit, he blew up the Capitol. Oh, and like his assistant was in there. Oh, this dude is like freaking crazy. He really doesn't give a shit. Like it was, and then by the end of the movie, we see what comes of it. And I was looking forward to seeing how that character might have evolved if the DCU had continued in a direction, where it was viable. But not the same character as Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, yeah, I mean, there may be some surface level comparisons, but ultimately two very different characters. And because I think Heath Ledger's Joker was like altogether much more brilliant in the sense that there was this dichotomy to the character of like his ability to give off an illusion and meanwhile be completely the opposite of that. Lex Luthor, that the one that we got from Zack Snyder, was very much like he was who he said he was. At least when he was telling people who he was, not the moments when
he's just ahead of the curve.
He's just ahead of the curve. Yeah, exactly. Just ahead of the curve. Well, John, it's been another great episode.
It's been a lot. I didn't expect it to go as long as it did, especially with a guy with a sore throat. Not really the best to be talking this much.
And I mean, my head was like spinning before we started this, and my head is probably still spinning after we finish this. But yeah, since we were doing Batman puns, or imitations, I think it's time to go mobile, and we will be back here tomorrow on DCU Daily, probably talking some more breaking news. If there's another story about Supergirl, maybe we'll get some update on Swamp Thing. Maybe we'll get some update on Superman. Maybe we'll get an update on Waller. We know that the scripts are being written, James Gunn, we know, but like, hey, we would love to hear any kind of news. Like, tell us when you're going to production on this. Maybe we'll get some behind the scenes pictures from Peacemaker. That would be season 2, like as they're proing that. Maybe James Gunn will post some index card, storyboards from Peacemaker season 2. That would be fun. Well, depends on the post. Depends on what scene he posts, because his drawings aren't very detailed. So you could see another one of those freedom scenes, and it wouldn't. It would probably be social media safe, but. Anyway, now I'm going in a really weird direction. So let's definitely like wrap this up before my oddly tired brain goes into more weird corners of the DC multiverse.
You don't turn your back on family.
And on that note, I think we should call it a day, John. It's time to go mobile, and we'll see you next time here on DCU Daily. Young Monday.